At Subway, start your day the flavorful way by adding new guacamole to your favorite breakfast sandwich. Perfectly made with a hint of jalapeno, our guacamole turns up the flavor to your breakfast. Try it today on a hot and toasty egg, white, and cheese. Subway, eat fresh.
The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects. The BS Report. The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. We are taping this on a Friday. It's been a busy week here at Grantland Central. We ran all of the Bill and Jalen playoff previews throughout the week. You could hear those also on in two different podcasts. You can see them on the YouTube channel. Zach Lowe had a big playoff preview that went up today on Grantland. We had the 30 for 30 and the 30 for 30 after show that they're rerunning tonight, ESPN Friday, 8 p.m., the 30 for 30 for the Pistons. 10 o'clock is the post-game show. The one thing we didn't have this week was Zach and I talking about the playoff matchup. So Zach is here right now because we needed more content on Grantland. You're excited for the playoff stuff.
I am excited. I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with the first round, but I do find myself excited, yes.
I just was on a Memphis radio station with our friend Chris Vernon. The people in Memphis seem to think that they have a real chance in this series. What do you think?
I agree. I think they do. I picked Oklahoma City in 7, so I think the Thunder will win, but that it will be competitive. I don't want to go overboard and say this is a close rivalry, but it has been a close rivalry. It was a 7-gamer, 3 years ago, and then last year a 5-gamer, but they didn't have Westbrook, and that series was close. Those games were close. Memphis needed to grind out that series, but I do think they know how to defend Kevin Durant. They know how to defend the Thunder, and the Thunder, they're going to fall into stretches where they play into Memphis's hands. We've seen that before, and they probably have the talent to get out of it. But I do think, look, Memphis has the best record in the league since Marc Gasol came back. Not the best point differential. It's actually just like 8th or 9th or something. But this is a really good team.
Yeah, and we think if Memphis was healthy the whole year, that's probably, a 55, 56-win team? And if they're in the East instead of the West, possible 1 seed.
Yeah, they might be the favorites in the East.
Yeah, so to have them as the 8 seed is pretty ridiculous. And it's a team that
7-7.
I said on Chris Vernon's show, their MVP might have to be Scotty Brooks in this series because if I'm Memphis, I'm dying for Scotty Brooks to go big. Please try to match our big lineup because the more Perkins that's out there and the more that the game slows down, I just think it plays in their hands. What do you think?
Well, that's what's going to be interesting because I do think this is a series where you need, if not Perkins, you need a center. You need to play big a lot, and I think this is a good series where Steven Adams will get his playoff feet wet. But this is what's interesting to me, and it took Scott Brooks 4 games to realize this last year when these teams met. The minute that one of Gasol and Randolph goes to the bench, you go small immediately. You put Durant at the 4 immediately. You cannot waste those stretches of time. And the counter to that is, well, if Durant plays the whole first quarter and Zebo and Gasol play the whole first quarter and they come out with whoever, Kufis or Ed Davis or whoever happens to be there at the start of the second quarter, you can't just put Durant in because he needs to rest. You just can't play all the time. But you have to be smart enough to rejigger your rotation to take advantage of those minutes. Any time you can put Durant at power forward with shooting around him without penalty of a big guy killing you on the offensive glass or posting it up, you have to do that. And it can't take 4 games for him to realize that again.
Yeah, and another big fear for them, Durant logged a lot of minutes. I really like Tom Haverstraw's piece this week about the fatigue of LeBron and Durant versus anyone else. I mean, you see just the minutes that they've piled up over the last 4 years. I was actually thinking about this. We had that Bad Boys 30 for 30 last night. And we actually watched it with Isaiah because he was going to come out with us after we did that postgame show. And we were just talking about the grind of what that Pistons team did. They say it in the documentary, 87, 88, 90, 90. That 5 years, they were in the Eastern Finals or the Finals every year. And at some point, they just wore out. It was like playing 6 seasons in 5. And you think about the miles Durant put up and LeBron put up these last 4 years, and just the wear and tear and the pressure of being the guy and just game after game after game. Then you look at this Memphis series with Durant, and Memphis could wear him down in this series if he has to guard the wrong person. I'm anxious to see how Scott Brooks handles this. I really think he could screw this series up for him. I'm not being too down on Scotty Brooks, right?
No, I don't think you are, and I do think. The good thing for him is that he's going to get Durant is going to get a lot of minutes where he just has to guard Tayshaun Prince, which means he doesn't have to guard anybody. But I think the Durant-Jordan comparison in this sense is fun. I mean, the Bad Boys documentary last night went into the Jordan rules, and the Grizzlies don't play that. They're not going to knock Durant over and be, violent with him. But when he posts up or when he gets into the paint, there are going to be 5 people around him. No one is going to guard Cephalosha. No one is going to guard Perkins. No one is even really going to guard Reggie Jackson or whoever else happens to be in the game other than Westbrook and kind of Ibaka. And Memphis is really good at doing that, but also being in the easiest passing lanes for Durant. So they make his life hard, and this is going to be a tough matchup. The one thing I will say though is if there's a vulnerability with Oklahoma City, it's that they allow a lot of open threes, and this is the worst. Memphis is the worst possible team to take advantage of that vulnerability. Unless Mike Miller has a giant series, you've got to have Prince or Tony Allen on the floor the entire game basically to guard Durant. And so you're just limited the amount of shooting you can put out there. That's the one thing that I think tilts this clearly in my mind to Oklahoma City.
So you think in crunch time, assuming Memphis can get a full series out of Miller did play 82 games. I'm thinking crunch time, they probably go Conley, Courtney Lee, Mike Miller, Zebo, and Gasol, right?
I think you got to go offense, defense. You can't. Lee and Miller cannot guard Durant.
So if Tony Allen's out there, then they just don't guard Tony Allen.
I think you have to go offense, defense as best you can in crunch time. If you have the timeouts and the stoppages to do it, there will be times where that's not possible. But I mean, that's the issue, right? Is it Prince and Allen? Nobody has to guard those guys. But Miller and Lee, I mean, I guess you would put Lee on Durant in that scenario. He's a better defender, not quite as big, but I mean, he can't. You have to double Kevin Durant in the post immediately on Courtney Lee, and maybe that's what you do. Maybe you force the ball out of his hands more than you normally would. Maybe that's the key to unlocking that Lee Miller pairing. I mean, they don't normally play all that much together. Those two, Jaeger splits them apart. But this is gonna be it's a fun series. On the one hand, we've seen this movie now 3 times in 4 years between these two, but it's a fun movie.
But the good thing for Memphis is they can hide some of their dudes in crunch time. If Oklahoma City has the wrong lineups out, like if I don't even know what Oklahoma City is going to do at crunch time, but I assume like whoever is in the corner, whether it's Cephalosha or Reggie Jackson or whoever, Memphis is just going to let that guy beat them. They're not going to let Durant beat them. So
absolutely, yeah. No one's guarding those guys. And the other interesting wild card is Caron Butler, who's been playing with Durant in a lot of these small lineups, and a lot of teams look at Butler as basically the power forward. They don't have to invert their defenses quite enough, as much as usual, to deal with the small lineups with Butler and Durant. They just put their power forward on Durant or on Butler.
Right.
So that's another interesting wild card. Yeah, but I mean, we've seen it again. They're not going to guard Perkins. They're not going to guard Cephalosha, and we'll see how the Thunder respond.
So it'd be interesting if. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Memphis doesn't technically have the right person to guard Durant, but really nobody does. But the closest they could come is Tayshaun Prince, but then that means he's playing for them. And now you're playing 4-on-5 defensively. And then if you have Tony Allen out there too, now you're playing 3-on-5 defensively. These teams kind of have the same problem, right? It's whatever they do, it ends up sucking away from the other side of the floor, whatever offense, defense choice they make. What do you think of the Memphis coach?
Dave Joerger?
Yeah.
Very smart guy. I like Dave. I think he hasn't gotten – I mean, he's been in a tough situation this year where Hollins goes out in sort of an ugly scenario and off the greatest season in the history of the franchise. And it's like, well, what the hell does the guy have to do to get brought back? Then they start off badly. And players get hurt, and he reinvents the offense in a way that the players can't grasp in the first 20 games. And everyone's calling for his head, and everyone's booing poor Nick Calathis because he stinks in the first 20 games. But he stuck with it. He stuck with the offense. He, readjusted it a little bit here and there to make it easier. He stuck with his defensive principles. He had faith in the team. and they rewarded him. They've been very good, and I think he's done a nice job. And the front office, really, look, I know that everyone's going to think we're biased because of Hollinger, but you look at some of the moves that they made, getting Costa Kufis for Darrell Arthur, getting Kalathis for nothing, getting James Johnson for nothing. They have done a really good job rounding out that rotation and giving Dave a lot of pieces to work with, and I think he's done well.
Yeah, we forgot to mention James Johnson because he's certainly the wild card of the series.
He's just
you catch him on the right night, and he looks like a world beater.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he had that stretch of about 3 weeks where he went crazy, and then Yeager stopped playing him, and everyone was like, well, what the hell happened to James Johnson? And I think, and you've harped on this before about sometimes you have too many guys. Yeah. And I think Yeager just thought, we can't go like 11 and 12 deep. It just doesn't work. And so he's turned Johnson into the wild card. And when they go small, which would be interesting to see if Memphis ever goes small, they'll put him at power forward, or he may even be a wild card option to guard Durant if Prince and Allen flame out. But it's been interesting that the James Johnson season trajectory has been kind of interesting. He's
in that class. We should come up with a name. Like you're the creator of the word hider, which I was super jealous of that you came up with that. The wild card dudes, like I always thought Gary Neal on San Antonio was a great version of this, right? Like he could get a DNP or he could come in and single-handedly win a quarter and swing a game, and you just never knew. And I think Bellinelli's a little bit like that too, although he has his playing time's a little steadier. But James Johnson is one of those guys that, the Grizzlies could be down 12 points in Game 3, and it looks over, and then it's like, hey, James Johnson's getting hot. What's going on? And all of a sudden it's a tied game. I think it's going to be a great series. I'm really looking forward to it. I wanted OKC Dallas a tiny bit more, but I like Memphis OKC too. The other thing, Memphis, those last two games, those are playoff games, and I just feel like they know who they are. They have an identity. They've been in a lot of big games. The crunch time stats with them are fantastic. They're off the charts, and hey, they're going to be tough to get rid of. They really are. If you're Oklahoma City, you fought the whole year to get. You have the second best record in the whole league, and you have to play Memphis in round one. They got to just be reeling right now that this is the matchup.
Yeah, nobody wanted to play Memphis. And by the same token, neither Memphis nor Dallas wanted any part of San Antonio. Yeah. And I think that's the story. An interesting little story here. I think the bracket broke perfectly for San Antonio. They're gonna destroy Dallas. Yeah. And I know that everyone will say, well, Houston was 4-0 against them, and Houston has the kind of athleticism that bothers them. And I think that's true. But a lot of players on both teams were missing in some of those games. I think there was some funky rest, back-to-back stuff going on in a couple of them. The Houston does not worry me from a Spurs perspective. They may take a game or two, but I think the Spurs, and look, and by the way, I'm sitting here assuming that Houston's going to beat Portland. I did pick them, but Portland's a good team. I think San Antonio got the best possible bracket for them, a semi-doable route to the conference finals, and Oklahoma City has to go through a minefield where somebody might knock them off before. I think this worked out as well as could possibly be for San Antonio. Yeah, and just it's so grueling for Durant. Not having Westbrook in the first part of the season, then Westbrook not playing back-to-back second part of the season. I didn't think Miami did a good enough job spelling LeBron all year. I will never understand why they handled the season that way and why they were so concerned with Wade and not concerned at all about LeBron. And I think the amount of minutes Durant played was kind of crazy, because ultimately it didn't really matter if Oklahoma City was the 2 seed or the 4 seed, whatever. What's going to matter is if he starts wearing down. I know sometimes when somebody's 25, you think they're superhuman, but I just didn't agree with that. I think, put it this way, if you were a coach, wouldn't you approach everything by asking yourself the question, what would Popovich do here? I just feel like that would be the question I ask myself all the time. And Popovich wouldn't have played Durant those kind of minutes, right? There are a lot of people around the league who do their jobs based on that, who when they approach a decision, whether it's something like a free agency or how much we should practice or whatever, they think, what would the Spurs do? And I believe the Heat would be the first team since the Russell era Celtics to make 4 finals in a row, right? Yeah, no, it was the Bird Celtics, right? 84. Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Yeah, the Bird. I knew it was a Celtics team. I blanked out on the fact that it was the Bird Celtics. But either way, 30 years. It's been a long time, and it's not just LeBron. I can't believe I blanked out on the childhood Celtics that I rooted for. It's been a long time, and it's not only LeBron. It's Wade, it's Battier, it's Ray Allen, who's had all those runs with the Celtics before he came to the Heat. There's just a lot of mileage on a lot of old dudes, and we don't even know who are the Heat for real with this Rashard Lewis stuff? Like, is Battier in the rotation? Is he out of it? What's going on with Odin? What's going on with Beasley? Like, we don't even know who's going to play for them. There's a lot of stuff stacked up against them.
I feel like this is a Spoelstra trick now, where he almost likes the chaos of people not knowing whether they're in or out depending on the round. This worked for them the last two years. This is a staple of them. Like, remember Battier midway through the playoffs last year was about as bummed out as anybody on a team that was potentially going to win a title. And then by the end of it,
he was essentially
back.
Benched. He was essentially benched for a couple of games.
So this seems like a Spoelstra thing. Wait, I want to go back to Houston 1 second. Van Gundy picked them to win the title.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, Houston, if you're going to make a out-of-the-box championship pick, Houston is the best possible pick. And I think Golden State would have been the best possible pick had Bogut been healthy, but he's not. And I think Houston, I mean, they have the profile, and they put together about a 35-game stretch where they really had the profile of a championship contender. And then Beverly got hurt and Howard started missing games, and they sort of just like were there for the last 15 games of the season. But they have two stars. They have a decent defense on the right night, sometimes a very good defense, sometimes a bad one, on an explosive offense. And I think that's, and they got, I mean, I don't mean to demean Portland because they're a good team. They got the team that everyone in the West wanted to play in the first round, and they were 4-0 against San Antonio. So if you're going out of the box, I don't even think Houston is that far out of the box. But if we assume that they are, that's the smart pick.
It's certainly a team. You know, the part everybody forgets of the playoffs is that you only have to play well 4 times. So, you know, you look at Indiana and be like, well, Indiana's been a 500 team since the last 2 months. That's true. But in the playoffs, if you're 500, that means you have Game 7 at home if you're Indiana. You know, like you can go 500 in the playoffs. But
this is the Heat the last 2 years. They play 4 times. They play well 4 times every series, and that's all they need.
So, we've talked about Houston before and how dangerous they could be in a series, but they have the one James Harden game where he scores 48. They have the one Chandler Parsons game when he makes 9 threes. They have the one huge Dwight Howard game when he has the 30-20. And that's 3 games. I worry that they're going to be healthy enough because Howard really hasn't been totally Howard since that little stretch they had when they knocked off the 3 contenders in a row, and then he got his butt kicked by Joakim Noah and that whole thing. We haven't really seen him unleash holy hell for about 2 straight weeks in a couple months. And, I need to make sure did we ever figure out how Beverly came back so fast? Are we sure he's 100%?
We're not. And he has to be in this series with Portland, with Lillard going around those pick and rolls where he just needs the smallest sliver of daylight to launch a 3, and with all the shooters around him, they need. They're going to, even if this round beyond, they need Beverly and they need Howard this round badly, because Howard, and I wrote about this in my preview, he just absolutely destroys Robin Lopez. Robin Lopez has no shot against a healthy Dwight Howard. He shot like 60% in the post, just obliterated Robin Lopez. And that, if they're healthy, that's the key to the series to me. But yeah, look, it's the same. We don't know how healthy Amir Johnson is for the Raptors, and he's a crucial player for them. I mean, all these sort of late season injuries, it's hard to tell sometimes how much is an injury and how much is, okay, he's recovered, but we're just going to sit him out because the games don't really mean anything anymore.
Yeah, because controversial opinion, I don't think Houston can beat Portland if Beverly's not healthy. Because for 2 reasons. One, he's really their only guy on the perimeter who can guard anyone. And then 2, I think he's kind of the key guy from them from a toughness standpoint, and they feed off him. And if he's not right, I think that's really going to affect them. It puts a lot of pressure on Jeremy Lin. And, by the way, Jeremy Lin versus Damian Lillard might be the all-time nobody can guard nobody matchup. I just think everybody just clear out of the way and let guys get layups if that happens. But
unless we get a couple of random cross matches where Harden is guarding Lillard, then the universe just might implode on itself. By the way, Anytime you have during the one season, like 3 YouTube compilations of your horrible defense become like viral, you know that you've had a bad defensive season.
I really feel like Harden was ruined psychologically by trying to guard LeBron in that finals. And it affected his offense, and then he was like, you know what? Everyone has to make choices in life, and I'm making mine now. I'm an offensive player. I'll never try that hard on defense again. I'm just not doing it. But in this series, he's not going to really have to guard anybody. You know, it's a nice matchup for him.
Well, I will say this. Wes Matthews is going to take him to the block. I was watching film of their games the other day, and I've talked to Wes about his post game. He goes after Harden, and to the point that they may put Parsons on him for some of the series, so Harden can take Batum. But Wes is going to make him bang down there.
My predictions are always wrong. I predict that this series goes 7. I just feel that this series to me reeks of 7. It stinks of 7. I can just feel it. And if Howard isn't right, I think Portland can win. I don't think this is a slam dunk by any means. I think this is actually a pretty good matchup for the most part for Portland, except for what you mentioned, that Robin Lopez against Howard. One of these, I remember I'm going to say in December, these two teams played maybe on a Thursday night game. And I remember Aldridge really took it to Houston. And I do wonder, that's another interesting part. If Howard isn't right, he's really the only guy in that team who can guard Aldridge. So, if he's not right, then all of a sudden now you're looking at Monty Eunice and people like that. And that's not going to be good. I guess they could bring Ashik in, but then, the Ashik-Howard combo, they've had such limited success with it. Hey, do you think they'll start playing them in the playoffs, or do you think they've just given up on it?
I think they've mostly given up on it, but we've talked about this before. I do think there will be a situation where we see it. They're on the opposite side of the bracket from Memphis, so that's not going to happen probably. But Ashik will get some time in this series on LaMarcus Aldridge, and that game you're mentioning was primarily LaMarcus Aldridge going crazy on Terrence Jones late in the game to the point that they had to switch Howard onto LaMarcus Aldridge. And I think we're going to see that switch sooner in this series because Terrence Jones just isn't big enough. But Howard has done well against Aldridge. I mean, the downside of that is that it takes Dwight away from the rim on pick and rolls and all those other plays that LaMarcus Aldridge is in. So that is interesting. You'd rather have Dwight near the rim for obvious reasons, but if that becomes untenable, how long do you stick with Terrence Jones? And they played at least once after Aldridge came back from what he had, a groin injury, and then he fell on his back. They played at least once since then, and Aldridge wasn't quite himself. And they were like, we don't give a crap who's covering you. We're leaving you one-on-one. Chandler Parsons one-on-one. James Harden one-on-one. They let Harden guard him one-on-one a couple of times. And they just let him do whatever he wanted to do. And, we'll see if they change that or if they're sort of going to let LaMarcus get his.
There's 2 possibilities for a massive fight in round 1. The first one is Steven Adams against anybody on Memphis, probably Zach Randolph. When I was on Chris Burden's show, I said, I wish there was a way to wager on Zebo waiting outside the Oklahoma City locker room for Steven Adams at some point during that series. I think you could lock that down. But then the other one, obviously, Beverly and Damian Lillard. At some point, those guys, that's just going to be like the streams are going to cross, and it's not going to be pretty because Lillard is one of the secretly toughest guys in the league. He doesn't take anything from anybody, and Beverly knows that, and he's going to be trying to get into his head that whole series. And at some point, somebody's getting mad at somebody.
They've exchanged some trash talk, have they not, this year? Wasn't there some verbal back and forth, I think, that the two of them had? I can't remember what the particulars of it were, but they definitely did.
Yeah, something's going to happen.
And Adams, I don't know what that dude does. He pisses everyone off. Like, every single game, someone is shoving that dude, and he just sort of stands there like he doesn't know what's going on or why anyone is angry with him. And this is why it's too bad Bogut is out, because Bogut, Blake Griffin, that you're not getting a game 2 without a fight or a shoving. Well, and when we say fight now in the NBA, we mean like a shoving match until the referees step in. And that's
Adams is one of the rare guys who actually Adams and Beverly, I would say, are 1-2 on the list of people who might actually get punched, where somebody's just like they know all the rules and they just have to do it anyway. Have you seen Adams in person?
Yes, I have. He was at Warren Legary's ping pong tournament at Vegas Summer League.
No, I meant like playing. Have you watched him play basketball in person this year?
Yes, I have.
So it's a different experience in person. On TV, you kind of get it, but in person, he's just running around and like his arms and his elbows are flying and he's just crashing into people. It's almost like you almost wonder if he has like no peripheral vision or something. There was one play, Blake had a dunk. They're running back up the court and Adams turned around to run back and just elbowed him right in the head. And it's unclear if he's doing it intentionally and he's the savviest cheap shot artist in the history of basketball or if he just has no control of his arms. But
I think the elbows have a little bit of a life of their own. I think he does have one of those, like, not quite Mutombo level, just sort of like my arms are out there, but I think he does have a little bit of that in him.
Well, I don't think America realizes that he's about to become one of the most fun characters of this playoffs, assuming OKC goes a few rounds, because I do think they're going to have to play him. And the thing I noticed when I watched in person last week when they played the Clippers was that every time he was out there, everyone on the Clippers knew he was out there. And that's a really, really important little X factor to have, especially like, the playoffs, you start getting annoyed with each other. And he goes out there and all five Clippers were kind of like, oh, watch that guy, be careful. It's just kind of what he does. Talking about Lillard for a second, though, I think every playoffs, there's some sort of somebody makes the leap, right? It's always a younger player on a big stage. He comes through, everybody gets really excited, kind of a breakthrough moment. I think Steph Curry is a great example last year where he was on one level going in the playoffs, jumped a level when he got to the playoffs and put himself in a different place. So I would say the two big candidates this year for this are Damian Lillard and John Wall. Who am I missing?
Now, I was going to suggest Wall, maybe DeRozan and Lowry with the Raptors, although Lowry's sort of a veteran, so maybe he doesn't fit. And, welcome to the playoffs again, Big Al, right? I mean, like, they're going to get slaughtered, but Big Al could put up 30 and 15 and they could get slaughtered.
Yeah, Big Al's definitely going to get his points. Here's what worries me for Miami in that series with that massive on-off switch they have. I don't think they can mail in a playoff game against Charlotte. Like you're gonna have to be a modicum of effort because Charlotte's just too smart defensively, and the Big Al's a real thing. Like he's gonna have 28 to 30 points a night. So, I think Big Al's gonna go out, but John Wall is the guy I was thinking for the leap because you and I aren't crazy about this Washington team. But on the other hand, they do have the Ney back, and I just like this matchup for them. I wasn't expecting them to play Chicago in round one. I think Chicago has a lot of trouble scoring points. I was watching them in that Charlotte game on the last night of the season, and when the game slows down like that, like they're running plays for Jimmy Butler. They're running plays for Mike Dunleavy Jr. Like that's not going to work in the playoffs. I think Washington can beat that team. What do you think?
I picked the Bulls in 6, but I was very surprised that only one of ESPN's analysts picked Washington because I view this as a toss-up series, and I get why people love Chicago so much, and their record in the last 50 games is remarkable. But I think we, as an NBA media collective, are overrating the Bulls, and I think the NBA is also overrating the Bulls. And I mean, like, the fact that Brooklyn did everything it could to get the hell out of that series and face Toronto and put themselves in Miami's bracket instead of Indiana's is crazy to me.
Me too.
The Bulls are I voted Noah Defensive Player of the Year. I love the Bulls. I love Tibbs. They're going to make you work. They're going to grind it out. I think people have begun. And look, they're 33 and 15 or something in their last 48 games, so they're playing well. But I do think people are starting to kind of conflate their physical and tough with an elite team. And one is true and the other is not. And I think the Wizards have a real chance in this series. I don't like the way that they match up with Chicago and how their style of play plays into Chicago's defense. But Wall if he's a superstar, this is why you have superstars. You have the guy who says, okay, this is a bad matchup. Our offensive tendencies play right into what they do, but I'm going to take all of that and totally flip the equation because I'm that good, and I can get to the basket against a team that doesn't let people get to the basket, or I can get those passes to the corners that the Bulls normally don't allow. He's fascinating in the first round for exactly that reason.
I'm going to go this far. I think Washington wins the series. A couple of things worried me about Chicago. We talked about just an inability to score at the last 5 minutes. It's just really hard for them to score.
They're a bad offensive team. Yeah, I mean that's why
they don't even have like the Nate Robinson type guy who could be like, all right, guys, I'm going to take over for a couple of possessions here. Like just every possession is a struggle. And in the playoffs, when it slows down, I think that's a real issue. And then, they've been playing 7 guys, for 3-4 months now?
Yeah, they've been playing a playoff rotation for a long time, which makes you feel like they're ready, but also you're like, oh yeah, they've been playing 7.5 guys for 2 months. The 0.5 is Nazem Muhammad and Tony Snell combined.
And you know what? I think Tibbs made a real mistake not playing Tony Snell. I would have tried to figure. I actually like Tony Snell. I would have figured out. I just don't think you can win a couple rounds in the playoffs with 7 guys. I think you need minimum 8. I don't think you need more than 9. But 7's not realistic. Any sort of injury kills them. And then on top of it, Washington, the Gortat and Nene combo, at least you know that they're not going to be totally pushed around inside by Noah and those guys. I think Washington can play fast, try to run, try to increase the pace. Beal is a bad matchup for Chicago. Washington has dudes who've been in games, right? Like Ariza won a title. Al Harrington's been in a bunch of big games. The professor. What happens to Chicago when the professor decides he wants to work some of his magic down in the low post on little short point guards?
DJ Augustine does not want to deal with Professor Andre Miller in the post. And we got to get Professor out of the first round, by the way.
I think he's going to be heard from in this series. They're deep.
He's going to be heard from it. In fact, Chicago may have to do some cross matching to account for him. And I think we'll see some of Jimmy Butler on John Wall for parts of the game when Heinrich is not in the game. But there's always one series where I don't quite have the guts to make the pick that I sort of want to make, and I end up regretting it.
I have the guts for you. I'm picking Washington.
When Dallas won the title, it was Dallas Lakers. In 2011, I didn't have the guts to pick Dallas, even though I knew that I felt in my bones they would win. I don't quite feel in my bones Washington is going to win this series, but I do think they have a chance, and I want to make the pick, and I just couldn't. I don't trust them quite enough yet. I feel like they have.
You shouldn't. They have Randy Whitman as their coach. Well, you can't trust them.
He's not a good coach, and they've had stretches of just like weirdly bad play throughout the whole season. And the Nene factor is interesting. I don't know how healthy Nene is and whether he's really ready to go. The lack of back-to-backs helps. He's been coming off the bench since he came back, and I don't know if they're going to keep him there as sort of the stabilizer of the second unit. I think they should probably start him and play him 30 minutes a game if he's ready for that, because Trevor Booker is still playing too much. I just don't know if he's ready for that, and if Randy Whitman will pull that trigger. But I think if I had a good feeling that he could start and play 30 minutes, you're right that they match up well with them. They're physical, they're tough, they're good defensive players inside. I think this is a good matchup for Washington. And again, I hope it's a good series.
We left out one part, too. A lot of their guys have been in a lot of big games. And, Nene's played in the conference finals. Andre Miller's been around forever. It's not like he's going to be nervous. Ariza, John Wall went all the way. Would they make the championship game when he was in Kentucky? I don't remember what happened that year. But the point is, it's not going to be a happy to be there team. Whereas I look at Toronto and I feel like if they win round 1, it instantly becomes like the second greatest moment in the history of Toronto basketball. Them just playing Miami in round 2 and even taking them to 6 games would be quite possibly the first greatest moment in the history of Toronto basketball, right? Like, I do feel like there's a happy to be there vibe with them at some point. I don't feel that way about Washington. I feel like they would go into round 2 against Indiana and believe that they could win that series and go to the conference finals. That, in my opinion, that's this year's threat to become the random Memphis that gets into the conference finals and everyone's just confused. Like, wow, what, Washington's in the conference finals. What just happened? Because that's what we were like last year with Memphis, you know?
Yeah, well, the winner of that series has a lot of conference finals equity. They have a real chance to get that far, the winner of Washington Chicago, because, you know, we'll see what we see from the Pacers against I'm going to call them the should be the Suns in round one. We'll see what the Pacers do. We'll see what the Pacers do against the should be the Suns. But what we've seen from the Pacers in the last 2 months, they're going to be vulnerable in the second round if they get by the non-Suns.
Right. And, you know, it's interesting. There's so little faith in Indiana right now. If you look at the gambling prices for the series, they're only minus 700 in round one against the Hawks. So you'd have to bet 700 to win 100. Normally you'd think like, all right, that Hawks team against any one seed should be like 30 to 1 underdogs, right? And in that series, you only get 5 to 1 odds on the Hawks if you think the Hawks could upset Indiana. So people don't know what to make of that Indiana team. I just think they have serious issues. I don't think this is a funk. I think it goes a lot deeper than that. And you were like one of the last people in their corner, and even you're starting to waver now, it feels like.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, a team doesn't play like they did for 2 months if something is not seriously wrong with them. Yeah. And they're still good enough to beat the Hawks because the Hawks stink. And although, you know, you'll see in my preview, the Hawks present matchup problems for them that I think are real. But just on sheer talent and defense, they're going to win that series. But after that, you know, all bets are off with Indiana. I mean, nothing would surprise me. And it wouldn't surprise me if the Hawks took them to 6 or even 7 games. 7 would mildly surprise me.
7 would be weird. I can't believe how bad Hibbert's playing. I joked on Sunday's countdown about that he's turning into Hashim Thabit, and it might actually be an insult to Hashim Thabit. I feel like if Hashim Thabit played 30 minutes, if Hashim played 30 minutes a game, I think he could get 1 rebound. How do you not get a rebound when you're 7-2?
He may be. I think it's a good offseason project to do an investigation of Roy Hibbert's rebounding, because he may be one of these. Like I think Kevin Pelton wrote a column a couple years ago calling them the Jason Collins all-stars, guys who never get rebounds, but their team always rebounds well when they're on the floor. Hibbert's numbers are like that this year. His rebounding numbers are like embarrassing for a power forward, let alone a center. Right. But the Pacers' defensive rebounding is very strong when he's on the floor, and you know, he just may be one of those guys. By taking up space and boxing out, he helps you a lot. Nene is like that. They're sort of like the anti-David Lees, who David Lee gets a ton of rebounds, but his team always rebounds worse when he's on the floor. But this does call for deeper investigation, because what's happened to his rebounding in the last 6 weeks has been like disturbing.
My fear with Indiana, like you look at like their last year or so before the swoon, and if you said, how would you describe that team? First thing you would have said is those 5 guys play awesome together, right? That was the foundation of everything they do. Then the second thing is they're just great defensively. And you just take and then maybe the third thing would have been really unselfish. Not a team with ego, like a different guy can win it from night to night. Nobody's looking at their stats. All 3 of those things are now gone with that team. And we don't know if any of them are coming back. And then you think about, we talked about a little on the Bad Boy show last night, like, you know, the Pistons, that was a team that had adversity, right? They had the steal in the Boston Garden where this game got snatched away from them. They had Isaiah's thing with Larry Bird, just another guy, very good guy if he's black. They lost this incredible finals that they should have won. They had a better team. They had this trade during the season with Dantley and Aguirre. Like, that's adversity. What this Pacers team went through, it was 1/20th of that. Like, Isaiah was just laughing. Like, really, Indiana? This was real adversity.
What did they even go through?
I don't know. What did they go through?
I guess they went through the verbiage of that phrase is like something happened to them. And all that happened to them was a guy who was their 7th best player got traded to a guy who is now their 7th best player, for a guy who's now maybe their 7th best player.
By the way, that 7th best player has been wearing street clothes at the Clippers bench for 3 weeks. Yeah, so there's a reason they traded him.
People forget he exists. And the other thing that happened to them is they brought in Bynum, who played 2 games. and now sits in streak. Like what? Nothing happened to them.
Roy Hibbert had this selfish quote. Well, great. A lot of teammates have called out a lot of teammates. Like, you get over it in a day. I think it's bizarre. And I thought it was really, really interesting when LeBron kind of called them out in his own way, when he was talking about, man, if they want to talk about adversity, what we went through in 2011 was like, he was basically saying, like, come on, Indiana, stop it. Like, you want adversity? You should have been on that 2011 Heat team. But it makes me think, like, the first time in the playoffs when that spotlight goes on for them, I wonder how they're going to handle it, because look at what happened last year. There's no Derrick Rose. They get to Miami. They win 3 games. They get blown out in Game 7. Then they start this year 18-1 against a pretty soft schedule, and everybody's acting like they're the 3-time world champions, And I think they did buy into the hype a little bit, unfortunately. But just going back to the basic reality of it, their 5 guys, which was an unstoppable 5-man unit, just isn't playing well, And that's a team I want to play in the playoffs if I'm any of these teams. If you had to guess, would you say Miami still?
I would.
I would too.
Yeah, I would. I think that's the only real sensible guess you can make. But I do think that, look, Miami has not played great in the last 40, 50 games of the season. I think they're like 30-22 in their last 52 games. Indiana's a train wreck. The West is not wide open, but open. I think there's more uncertainty with this playoffs than we've seen in a while. Like, it would not it's not going to be shocking at all if an unexpected team is in the Eastern Conference Finals. Probably a team that upsets Indiana somewhere along the way, which is why, again, I just think it's crazy that Brooklyn tanked their way out of the 4-5. I just think if you want to win the title, I get that they're not scared of Miami, and they sort of like that matchup. They're 4-0. They thrive. Garnett and Pierce and all those guys thrive on beating the Heat in Miami. We've seen teams like Chicago owns Miami until the playoffs. And the way Indiana's playing, I don't like the idea that they position themselves on the opposite side of the bracket. And look, they can say whatever they want about we're old, we're resting guys. They tanked. I mean, look at their starting lineup in the last game. It was embarrassing. They wanted this matchup and they got it.
Here's my weird theory on this. I don't know if I'm right. I think they wanted to save the miles on Pierce, because had it gone the other way, round 1 they're going against Taj Gibson and Boozer basically, and they've been. They've had the most success with Pierce playing the 4. Then round 2, you'd have David West. And I think just a theory, I think they looked at that and said, well, all right, let's say we get through these 2 rounds with all that mileage we're going to be putting on Pierce in those 2 rounds, now he's got to guard LeBron in round 3. That's the only thing that makes sense. I agree with you, though. I would much rather have played Indiana. I mean, it's no contest. But prolong Miami as much as possible and hope they get knocked out somehow. I didn't understand it.
I think you might be onto something with Pierce, though, because they're going to play Toronto. Amir Johnson does not post up at all. I mean, they may try and force feed him a little bit to exploit that matchup. And it's easy for me to say, like, when the Nets have played the Bulls, Pierce has done fine against Boozer. And so it's easy for me to say, well, what are they scared of? Pierce has done fine against Boozer.
They're doing
fine. It's a grind. It's physical. He beats you up, and you need to help, which the Nets do well anyway, sort of send guys digging down. But it's a grind. And I just remember talking to Battier during the conference finals last year in the finals, and he talked openly about it. But I remember running into him pregame and just dealing with Boozer and then dealing with David West. I mean, he was like shot. I think that's a big reason why.
I forgot about that. You're right.
I think that's a big reason why he slumped shooting-wise until he recovered.
You think about Pierce really wore down remember how the Celtics used him last year after Rondo got hurt, played some big minutes. By that time the Knicks series rolled around, his legs were gone. And I think, kid's smart. Kid played in the league for 20 years. He gets it. I think if anyone is kind of thinking a little bit like Popovich, it's Kid. KG could have played more than he played down the last half of the season. Kid knows he just wanted to get 4 rounds out of him. And
KG is interesting. Like, does KG have like 30-minute games in him now? I mean, like even since he's come back, he's played like 13 minutes, 14 minutes. Is that all he has, or is there a 25-minute KG that they've just been saving for the playoffs. Yeah, I don't know.
Don't you think it's like 2 9-minute stints and then 4 minutes? The last 4 minutes of crunch time. That's what I think. Like 22 would be the number.
Could be.
Something
But
like
that's
that.
another. That's
they
an
lucked
interesting.
out with Plumlee though, because I think he'll actually be able to play for him.
Oh, there's no question. Plumlee's been great. He has to play, and I think if anything, Blatch may be their break in case of emergency bench guy. I think Plumlee has supplanted Blatch.
He's out, and I mentioned the Plumlee thing because it's rare to see a team count on a rookie, especially in the more physical conference. But I think he at least proved that he can give them 20, 25 minutes without running around like a chicken with his head cut off. Joe Johnson looked really good the second half of the season for him. He's never going to be the guy he was in Atlanta, but you just look at their stats, man, with their best 4 3-point shooters and the Marcus Thornton random career resurgence. Unbelievable. He's looming as a heat check guy in the playoffs, right? He could swing a game. Who knows with Marcus Thornton?
Yeah, I would be nervous having him chase around Terrence Ross and DeMar DeRozan on defense. But Joe Johnson is interesting because he has a huge size advantage over whoever Toronto is going to throw at him, and they're going to post him up a lot. And you think that's like devastating for Terrence Ross or DeRozan, and it is. And he's bigger, he's physical, he'll get position, but he shot poorly against the Raptors. And I wonder if there's some aspect of like Toronto sort of entrapping the Nets into taking all these 10-foot little floaters in the lane that are actually tough shots, when what you really want from a Joe Johnson post up is a double team and a kick out.
Right.
But he's gonna take those guys down low, and whether it's how that works out is going to be huge.
And then the other part to watch with that series is the whole Darren Williams thing. He's played a little bit better, but that's something where the guy who can win this series, this goes back to the best player in the series usually wins the series thing. If Lowry is the best player in the series, that's a huge problem for Brooklyn. And if Lowry is dominating Darren Williams in this series and just taking it to him and just beating him on both ends of the floor and getting in his head and getting Darren Williams to settle for those terrible 25-foot Darren Williams jump shots, and they have to actually play Livingston, and Darren Williams is sitting at crunch time, Darren Williams could sink them. Like, just his personality and him sulking and all that stuff, like, that could knock them out of whatever little happy place they're in right now. So, Livingston's been really good.
Yeah, Livingston's been good. I mean, they're at their best, obviously, when both of them are on the floor together. I don't think D. Will is ever going to be like flawless, fiery playoff guy, but I think I think he's found a good place for this, because you've got KG and Pierce and Joe Johnson, especially Johnson and Pierce are ball dominant guys, kids at a good, even keeled pro coach. And Livingston is around to defend the tougher guards and do whatever Livingston does, post up and all that. I think D. Will has found a good spot for him to just sort of not quite blend in, because he does more than that, but to not have to be. Well, to not have to be super dominant all the time. I think he's found a good spot. I think they're going to be okay. I think that's going to be a very good series. That was actually the toughest one for me to pick. Yeah,
because everyone's just moving ahead to Miami, Brooklyn in round 2. It's like Toronto's not even in the playoffs, and definitely Toronto is a little flawed, but at the same time they've been really good for 4 months for an Eastern team, and Lowry's been locked in and playing for a new contract. I don't know if he's going to be this year's J.R. Smith, where he's trying so hard for the new contract that everything just falls apart like a house of cards.
Nah, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. He's not going out with Rihanna, I'll tell you that much. That Raptors team is not. I saw your Jalen's reference to Toronto never closes and all that. Like, the Raptors are that's a calm professional team. They don't mess around. They'll be good. They'll be all right. Dwayne
Casey saved his job, I think.
Yeah.
It seemed like he was on the way out in November, December. I think he's flipped the script. That'll be interesting. I'm excited for a Dwayne Casey versus Jason Kidd series, though. With that being said, Jason Kidd, I think, is going to do some wild card stuff.
All old buddies from Dallas, from the Dallas championship team. Who did you pick in this series?
We hit every series but Clippers Golden State.
The one everyone wants to see. We hit everyone but that.
The most entertaining series, no question. And a lot of people are just kind of locking out Golden State because of the Bogut thing. I'm going to flip it the other way for 1 second. So I really like when the Warriors just go small. I like when most teams go small, actually, but especially them. I just like their identity more when they have more shooters out there, and it's a little more chaotic and a little just from play to play. You don't even know what's going on, and then all of a sudden Stephen Curry's open again, and then Klay Thompson's open again, and the more chaotic they can make it, I think the better it is for them. In a weird way, is it possible that it would be better for them not to have Bogut in this series?
Not possible.
Not possible, okay.
Well, because I think their best scenario is small with Bogut. I think if you order sort of the order of things you'd like to do is small with Bogut is better than small with Lee or small with O'Neal.
Yes, we can agree on that one.
But I do think I thought hard about picking the Warriors in this series because I think they have the goods to make this a very competitive series even without Bogut. For exactly the reasons you're saying, I think they can spread the floor with a lot of shooting. If they put Draymond Green at the 4 with Lee at center, they don't have a defensive presence, but they have 4 guys who can shoot threes and 2 big guys in Lee and Draymond who are really good passers. And if you just combine that with Steph Curry running pick and rolls, like that Clipper defense is not ready for that. And Golden State can score. And that's their avenue to winning this series now, is I just think outscore the Clippers. And they have the goods to do that. I just don't think they have the goods to do it 4 and 7 without Bogut. But I think it's going to be a good series still, as much as I wish that Bogut were playing.
We're in the same headspace with that word outscore, because it's a weird thing to say, because obviously the goal of any basketball game is to outscore. But I don't totally care that they're not going to be able to stop the Clippers on defense, because I don't think that's the secret to them winning the series. I think the secret to them winning the series is just for them to outscore them and be more explosive. And if the game goes into the 120s, then they're the team that has 127 points instead of 123. You know what I mean? Like, I think Jackson, a really frustrating coach for a lot of reasons. You know, it always seemed like he was intent on kind of blending new wave basketball into like the basketball that he had on those late 90s Knicks teams, or, you know, the Pacers teams or whatever.
Pacers, yeah.
And I don't think it's that team. I think with that team, you kind of do the Hornacek. You just roll the ball out and you go and you run and gun and guys shoot, and Klay Thompson takes 10 threes and Curry scores 17 points in a quarter, and that's who you are. And I think that could be a real problem for the Clippers. The other thing is, the Clippers never found that backup big. So, you know, it's Blake and DeAndre a bust for them right now. You realize Turkoglu's going to be averaging like 15 minutes a game in this series, right?
And like 400 licks of his hands
and
during
18
those
missed
15
layups,
minutes.
And he's going to airball 3. I mean, he was washed up 3 years ago. And
Yeah,
they
Big
never
Baby.
addressed that backup big spot. It's a real problem because DeAndre and Blake cannot shoot free throws, and that is going to kill them in one of these games.
I thought Big Baby would be a really meaningful addition. And
Me too.
I guess all the playoffs are really all that matter when you're as good as the Clippers, so he still could be, but it is not. He came there and basically threw the computer keyboard through the window in Los Angeles. It just did not work out. But look, we've talked about this before. Steph Curry is a scheme buster. He's a game plan destroyer. And if you are playing the Warriors, when they put Steph Curry in a pick and roll, that's your whole defensive game plan has to change. Now, the Clippers are a little bit more aggressive than a lot of other teams, but you've got to come out with Blake and DeAndre 30 feet, 25 feet from the hoop. And I don't have a lot of confidence in the Clippers to be able to stay coherent doing that. I think Steph Curry and the passing of the whole team, they can do damage against that Clippers defense, which is not done really well against plus 500 teams. And, you know, look, I got to see Redick play big minutes again.
Hasn't looked healthy.
Because if they can't get big minutes out of Redick and Barnes, you got to play Crawford a lot, who's going to play a lot anyway, and you got to play Collison a lot, and you got to play Little a lot. And the Golden State can make – Klay Thompson's not a great post-up player. Harrison Barnes isn't a great post-up player. But you put them against little guys, and they become good post-up players. Golden State's made hay with that before. We'll see how many minutes Redick and Barnes can play. But Golden State has some avenues here to make this interesting. I don't think they can pull it off without Bogut, but they've got avenues.
Yeah, I'm thinking in crunch time, I don't know if DeAndre's out there because you don't have Bogut out there on the other side. I think the Clips are going to try to go with Griffin, Matt Barnes as the stretch four, and then some combination of Crawford, Reddick, Paul, probably those three. But if they do that, that's great for the Warriors. They'll be like, awesome. All right, so we'll go small two.
Yeah, put Barnes at the four.
Yeah, and we'll have fun, and we'll turn this into a three-point shooting contest. We have the top 2 3-point shooters in the league right now. Let's do this.
Yeah, if you give the Warriors minutes where they can put Draymond Green at center, which is something they've only done for spot little stretches of 2 and 3 minutes here or there, sometimes more. But if you give them minutes with Blake at center, where they can put Draymond at center, they are impossible to match up with. Now, so are the Clippers, and again, that just gets back to the outscoring mentality. But I just think in the end, the Clippers, and we haven't even mentioned Chris Paul's name.
Well, we have to. I was going to say though, off your Golden State point, how much fun would it be to see Don Nelson coach this specific Warriors team without Bogut? Right? You said Draymond Green at center. Like, he would probably start Draymond Green at center. He would do the goofiest, craziest lineups, and would have the Clippers trying to react instead of act to all the people that he's throwing out there. I think that's how Mark Jackson has to win the series. I don't think he's a good enough coach to maybe figure that out in time, but I think the weirder the lineups, if you're the Clippers, it's not like you can take advantage of a small lineup. Blake's the only guy they have who can post anyone up. So,
yeah, the rebounding is where they'll get hurt. I mean, that's what worries me from the Warriors is that
but maybe just give that up.
Well, when Bogut sat this year, the Warriors just got killed on the offensive glass by the Clippers, and I think that's where DeAndre is not a post-up guy, but it's one of those things where like sometimes your best offense is just throw the ball at the rim, and DeAndre gets a rebound or goes and gets it. I think rebounding, and again, this is the kind of thing where I think as the series goes longer, these kind of advantages sort of just start to seep in and cement themselves, and I just think it's just the Bogut disadvantage is going to be too much in the end, but that'll be a lot of fun getting there.
Well, the litmus test game for that was a couple weeks ago with Mozgov and Fareed when they had about 1 million combined rebounds against Golden State.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the Clippers looked at that and were like, look, here's the tape. These are the kind of offensive rebounds we're going to be getting every night. And that could be your case to play both of those guys together. I think the Clips win in 7, and as you said, we hadn't talked about Chris Paul. Chris, he'll go. He has another gear to get to, and he'll get there. And if he's the best player in the series, they're going to win. But I think the key for Golden State, other than the stuff we talked about, is just keep doing what they do against Blake. Keep pushing him, keep annoying him, keep knocking him down, keep staring him down, because that he does lose his composure with that stuff, and they're the one team that's over anyone else that's really figured out how to just annoy the hell out of him. Like, they bug him, and you want to get in your head. So we think that's the best series, right?
I think that has the most entertainment potential. I guess that would be the best series. I mean, Memphis Oklahoma City is going to be really good, but perhaps not aesthetically pleasing. Sleeper potential is Portland Houston.
Yes, I was going to rank that one second. I don't think that's one. I don't think the casual fans will be like doing backflips about that one, but I think there's so much weird stuff going on in that series, and so many weird subplots and variables and things to watch and look at. Does this guy look right? How are they doing this? Like that's a good basketball nerd series. Oklahoma City, Memphis is another good basketball nerd series, I think. But I think most intriguing team for me just in round 1 is Washington, because that's a team 10 days from now we could be saying, wow, Washington, John Wall, and it would be all the same stages that we went through last year with Golden State. Or that's a team that could just lay an egg, and we'll be like, wow, Randy Whitman, they got to get rid of him.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying all year, Wall, Beal, Ariza, Gortat, Nene is a really good starting lineup. And what I've been saying is it's a really good starting lineup. Why aren't the Wizards better? Why are they 500? Why can't they get over 500? So at the end, I just don't trust them enough. But I mean, they have potential to be the breakout star team. I think Spurs Mavs will be beautiful to watch, but a slaughter. And so maybe not that entertaining. But have you made I haven't watched all the Jalen videos. And have you made your official picks?
No, we had because we taped those ahead of time.
That's right.
I'm going to do it on Countdown tomorrow. I can do it now though. I'm sticking with what I had in the preseason. I think it's Miami San Antonio again. I just think we're destined to run it back.
Yeah, I think that is probably my pick. I'd like to see how the matchups work out. I still worry about the Oklahoma City matchup for San Antonio, but like I said before, I think the brackets worked out perfectly for them. But what about series by series? Are you doing that on TV too?
Yeah, I have. I'm going chalk except for Brooklyn and Washington. I would have those two. I think Brooklyn gets by Toronto, and I think Washington's gonna beat Chicago. And I didn't think that until Wednesday night when I was watching Chicago against Charlotte, watching them try to figure out how to score. And it just kind of, the light bulb went off in my head, like, oh, wow. Like, we get so caught up in the Tibb stuff and the Noah stuff and the overachieving and just everything. But it's just fundamentally difficult for them to score. And I think, will they get to 90 points more than twice in any series? I don't know.
You have me regretting my Bulls pick. I feel regret now.
If you want to 180 it and you could do, that's a classic ESPN move, by the way. Make a pick in one forum and then switch on another forum. You're more than welcome.
I think I had Bulls in 7. Bulls have home court, right? So I think I had Bulls in 7. I'm going to stick with that. I have faith in the Bulls to grind out these wins and Washington to throw a game away that they should probably win. I'm going to stick with it, but it's going to be, I can't believe we're here already, but 4 games tomorrow, man, we're here.
Yeah, I'm going with the ridiculous Final Four of Miami over Washington and then OKC and San Antonio. I'll tell you, if the Clippers had gotten the 2 seed, I would have picked them over Oklahoma City. I think the Clippers are going to be a really, really good home team. Just something about their style with the crowd and how comfortable they are there. And I just think that they're going to be a tough out as it goes along at home. But you could say the same for Oklahoma City. And also, really, it's been Durant's year. It would be shocking to see him not at least get to the conference finals with how well he's playing. And then it just sets up for the Oklahoma City San Antonio series that Popovich doesn't want. He doesn't want to see Durant.
Nobody wants to see Durant.
Somebody knock them off.
But it's funny, you think you went right to Miami, San Antonio, and I've seen a couple of blogs do this, like you pick the whole playoff bracket. For some reason, I don't think of the playoffs that way, but I do think of March Madness that way, and I think it's just because of the 1 game versus 7 game single. I don't look at the playoffs as a bracket at all. Like I don't even think one round ahead because I want to see how 7 games is enough that like a team could figure something out about itself, or someone could get hurt, or so many things could happen that it's funny. It's just a philosophical thing. I hate picking the bracket because I want to see how things shake out. But like I think San Antonio is the best team. If I had gun to my head, I would pick them to win the championship, but I would feel a lot better about that if somebody knocked out Oklahoma City before they got to San Antonio. It's just weird. I just don't think of the playoffs as a bracket like that.
So my fear of picking against San Antonio goes like this. Every time I count them out, they shove it in my face. I'm just tired of it. I'm just going to keep picking them until Duncan's retired. But the fear for picking them is they're so good at what they do game to game. They've created such a great infrastructure. They know who they are, all that stuff. I worry if they have that extra floor in the building to get to, whether it's a 6-story building and they're on the 6th story. When I watch Oklahoma City, especially at that Clipper game last week, where it really dawned on me, like their best game is the scariest game that anybody in the playoffs has, even Miami. Miami's best game when Wade is flying around and doing Wade stuff again, which who knows if we'll ever see, and Bosh is making threes, and, they can still get there. But when Westbrook is doing Westbrook stuff and Durant is making shots and Ibaka's flying around and their bench is playing well, that is the best team in the league. I just don't know if they can consistently get there. But, we saw this 2 years ago when they played San Antonio. They're down 2-0. And all of a sudden, they just played their best game 4 times in a row, and they knocked San Antonio out. And San Antonio just couldn't get to that best game ceiling. So that would be my fear if I'm San Antonio. Would you agree that Oklahoma City's best possible game is the best game?
Whew. It's hard for me to not think that LeBron's team's best possible game is the best game.
I know, but think with banged up Wade, like I don't think that's in them anymore.
No, it's one of those two teams. It's one of those two teams. I agree. The Oklahoma City, when their athleticism is channeled the right way, is very hard to beat. They're
just terrifying. They're just a terrifying basketball team.
The one thing I will say though is San Antonio is better. This is what everyone's worry is with San Antonio, that there is no other level for them. And I think that's what you're getting at with Chicago too, is like we've seen the best of Chicago. Chicago does not have a playoff gear.
No.
San Antonio has a minutes uptick still in the bag for its best players. And I just think they're better than they were last year. Kawhi Leonard, since he came back from injury, has been a monster on both ends of the ball. Ginobili's healthy and has been a monster all year. Bellinelli is like multiples better than Gary Neal. Patty Mills has been sensational all year. And they're healthy after getting all the injuries out of the way in the middle of the season. I just think, and I've been the one harping on the Oklahoma City matchup for them for 2 years, and I think it's a problematic matchup. But I do think this Spurs team is equipped to beat anybody, including Oklahoma City. Not saying I would pick them, but I would think about it now, and I would not have 6 months ago. That's how good the Spurs have been.
And one other thing to watch out with them, and just in general, I mean, it's stupid to predict injuries and stuff like that, but every year injuries have sidetracked somebody. You know, you saw it last year with Westbrook, saw it a year before with Derrick Rose. San Antonio kind of quietly put a lot of miles on their dudes the last 3 years. They made the conference finals in 2012. Last year they played like 105 games or something, went all the way to a Game 7 in the finals. And now this year they'd have to, if they made the finals, that would be another 4 rounds in a row. And even though they've been great spotting everybody's minutes, it's just a grind of doing 9 months a year of basketball for 3 straight years is really tough. And for the same for Miami. You know, we talked earlier about 4 straight finals. I just don't think the average person realizes how hard that is. You're playing 16 playoff series basically in like a 39-month span or something, you know? And some of those games count as 2 games. Like Game 6, Game 7 in the finals last year, those count as like 7 games on your odometer. Those aren't 2 games. Those could, like the stress, the physicality, just everything. You know, you're never the same after those games. And so I'm going to be interested. I think there could be one injury this year that could literally swing the title. And the same thing, like, well, you know, Duncan pulls a calf or Ginobili's shoulder pops out. Like, who the hell knows? You know, that's why it's impossible to predict this stuff. I'm starting to sound like you.
Yeah, impossible to predict does sound like me. Some late breaking news here that is going to make you sad, courtesy of the NBA.
Did we lose the coin flip?
Utah wins the tiebreaker from Boston. I think all that means is that Utah has one more ping pong ball combination than Boston. I think that's all it is.
No. I think the ping pong, but it's worse than that though. They have the same number of ping pong balls, but if the order after the top 3 now becomes Utah over Boston.
Yes.
Why didn't they televise the coin flip, by the way? That would have been more riveting than anything we showed on ESPN today. Who doesn't watch the coin flip?
Well, first of all, it's not a coin flip. Tim Frank, the head of NBA PR, went out of his way to tweet this yesterday. It's a random drawing. Now, I don't know what that means, if they're drawing like aces high out of a deck of cards or something, but it's just a random drawing. But yeah, you're right. I said it's only one ping pong ball combination, but of course it's the order of the draft basically. So that Utah starts in one position ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're now 5th, but if somebody's 6, 7, 8, 9, whoever
jumps
leapfrogs into the top 3, now they're 6th.
Yeah.
But from a getting into the top 3 standpoint, what is it, like 34%, something like that for them?
Yeah, it's not a big drop in terms of getting into the top 3.
to go backwards. Celtics have never had a pick on this. I can't believe they're rigging this now. Milwaukee's going to win number 1 because the guys just bought the team. Utah's going to sneak into number 2 so they can get Jabari, and then the Lakers will get number 3 so they can take Exum. I'm already mad. This chicanery hasn't even happened yet. I'm already upset.
Wow. You need to have a drink, and that's what I'll be doing tonight on the last playoffs.
And this is after Ty Corbin's heroic performance on Game 82, pulling out double OT for no reason whatsoever to even have the coin flip.
That was unbelievable.
Thanks to Kevin Love, by the way, for not only murdering Minnesota in that game, but also making me feel better about not putting him in my second team All-NBA.
He made third team for you?
Huh?
He made third team for you?
Yeah. I didn't feel great about it.
By the way, I'm absolutely paranoid. I was told that on ballots, you get a confirmation email to make sure you didn't screw up your ballot. And I did not get a confirmation email. And you know how they have those drop-down menus?
Yeah.
And Seth Curry is right next to Stephen Curry. I'm like absolutely paranoid that I voted Seth Curry third in MVP. And then I'll just get blackballed from ever having a ballot again.
It would be an internet earthquake. Grantland Zach Lowe votes for Seth Curry for third team All-NBA.
I don't think I did that. I'm 99% sure.
I last second did a little switcheroo with my third team All-NBA center and gave it to Tim Duncan over Dwight Howard.
Wow.
Yeah. I just said, you know what? I don't really like watching Dwight Howard. Doesn't seem like he's a great teammate. The Spurs won 64 games or 63, whatever it was. Duncan put up a 15-10. He's the best teammate in sports. I'm rewarding him.
I'm
fine with All-NBA.
I'm fine with rewarding Duncan. I put him on first team all defense because I just think the Spurs need to be represented. There's just no right answers with the All-NBA teams. When you get to the power forwards and the centers, there's just so freaking many of them. Like Melo didn't make yours, right?
Oh, God, no.
Melo didn't make mine. Melo had the best season of his career, and he didn't make my All-NBA team. He's probably not going to.
You're not making it.
I mean, Anthony Davis made mine.
Really?
Yeah.
Over Kevin Love?
No, Kevin Love I put on the second team.
So Paul George got bumped.
Paul George I made a guard on the third team.
Oh, you cheated. You're not allowed to do that.
Yes, you are.
That's a total cheat. He doesn't play guard. Come on.
He plays. I mean,
how dare you bend the rules like that? That's terrible.
First of all, shooting guard and small forward are the same position, basically.
Oh, stop it. I didn't know you could bend the rules like that. I had Lowry and Tony Parker as my third team guards.
I had Lowry too. I think Lowry's going to make it. I think there's been enough of a groundswell for Lowry as a possible. Well, I still actually don't think he's going to make it. John Wall would make it over him, which would not be right. But
no,
I
think people are smart enough to know Lowry should make it. Hey, don't you think the voting these days in 2014, it's a little like the Oscars where there's so much material on who to vote for that anybody who doesn't really follow basketball is at least somewhat aware of who they should vote for, whereas 10 years ago, all bets were off, you know?
A little bit.
That's how you end up with Kobe in the all-defense team in 2011.
He might still make it this year. Who knows?
That would be phenomenal. God, I'm so bummed out. I can't believe we lost the coin flip, and I can't believe I care this much.
I'm sorry that I ruined your day.
Playoffs, Zach. Hey, Zach, you use Stamps.com, right?
I have before, yeah.
Yeah.
It's better than the post office.
It's so much better than the post office. I hate the post office. Everyone hates the post office. That's why I go to Stamps.com. You go to the top right corner of their website. You put a little BS. You get a deal on a scale and free postage and a lot of free stuff. It's fantastic. They're a sponsor of the BS Report. Stamps.com. And check out Zach's playoff preview on Grantland. Check out all the Bill and Jalen stuff. We will see you on Countdown on Saturday and Sunday on ESPN and ABC. A quadruple header tomorrow, Zach. I'm working for 12 straight hours.
Oof.
Some good games, though.
Oh, it'll be fun. It'll be fun.
The one surprise was Indiana Atlanta cracked the Saturday ABC ESPN schedule. I thought that was just going to be NBA TV only.
No, they go back to NBA TV next week, though. The NBA, and we've gone too long, I realize, and I wrote this today, they need to embrace the Hawks being on NBA TV and make a commercial that parodies the Masters commercials, where it's like the Hawks on NBA TV.
That's a great idea.
In April. A tradition that no one cares about, or something like that.
The official playoff team of NBA TV. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right,
Zach,
have fun tomorrow.
All right, thank you. Thanks for coming on. Everybody enjoy the weekend. We'll see you next week in the BS Report.
So I get to sign off. Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.
Gotta say, Golick, great call on grabbing Subway for lunch and getting guacamole on our subs.
Told you this new guac really amps up the flavor.
Yep, something adding up things can be great. Guacamole on your sub, a new co-host to replace you.
What was that?
Oh, no, nothing.
Subway now has deliciously rich new guacamole made from ripe Hass avocados with just a hint of garlic, onion, and jalapeno. Discover how new guacamole turns up the flavor on any of your freshly made favorites. Subway, eat fresh.